selectors, and let's finish off this review of Curiosity Diva with the last cards that I think these are the best cards. So we're doing a little something different than the last time. We're not going over every card individual. We're just going to go over the cards that I think are worth mentioning to take note in this set. Now, this might have a lot to do with stuff that's currently relevant, although I've peppered in some stuff that I think might be a little bit more relevant in the future. There's a lot of cute things in this set itself too. Like, for example, Cosmos has more of an identity now than they've ever did. But that being said, there's still not quite enough there that I'm like over the moon, pun intended, with that kind of stuff. And if we ever need to revisit those cards, we'll revisit those cards when we get to the future sets where they've now been more enabled or they're suddenly viable. But all of the cards here I think are viable and up. Some of them are more optimal than others, and we'll discuss those as we go through. The first set, and this is in no particular order, by the way. The first set is this set of level 2 vanillas here. They all more or less say the same thing in their own variations, which is we have a red, a white, and a black level 2 vanilla with the life burst, 10,000 power, with the life burst of you may pay colorless. If you do vanish target Signy on your opponent's field, you may pay colorless if you do bounce target Signy into the opponent's hand, or you may pay colorless if you do Signy gets on your opponent's field gets negative 15k. So these are all variations of basically they're colored versions of the same thing. I found that I've enjoyed these more than the free options that are available in the sets prior, which are usually 8Ks and under. I still value freeness. Don't get me wrong, but having a life burst that can kind of hit just everything at the cost of 1 enter is actually quite strong. You also have a version of this basically that you can do if you discard a card. But there's a lot of stuff that discarding cards not necessarily great. But I think some mix of these, the free ones or the discard a card ones, are going to be your best bets for what are the best random life bursts that you can do. I don't think you necessarily should be filling your deck with vanillas anymore. I think we're starting to get to a point where probably after this set, you really should be avoiding vanilla Signies. But this set is still, you might need to fill out 1 or 2 slots with them. And you need to, these are the ones that I think are probably a good choice for it. Moving right along, the next one is the Hamlin Step Duo. The cool thing with these cards, by the way, is you put them together, they're a panorama. That's why I wanted to put these together to show. I think that Hamlin Master Trickster is more powerful than Hamlin Step. I've seen a lot of Japanese lists run 4 of and 4 of, and I'm actually not in favor of that. I think if you're running Hamlin Master Trickster, you're not running you don't need to run Hamlin Step as much. Hamlin Step, basically, let's just read them verbatim. Hamlin Master Trickster is a level 3 10k that it has the auto ability of whenever this Signy attacks, your opponent may discard 2 cards. If they do, they negate Hamlin's attack, which stinks. It's not a good ability. But the other ability, which is at the beginning of your attack step, you can pay blue. If you do, target Signy in front of this, you get to turn it face down. Remember, face down Signies don't exist, basically. At the end of the turn, they can turn face up. If there's a Signy over them, then that Signy will get trashed. This is one of the few ways in blue that you can enable a cheap lane opening, especially with blue, which sometimes cares about not providing enter to your opponent, right? This is a Madoka-esque kind of ability where Madoka 2.0 kind of cares about not sending enter to your opponents. So this ends up being very good there. The issue is your opponent can discard 2 cards and they can negate the attack, and then you just lost some enter. In a late game, that doesn't matter so much because you probably have enter to spare. But in a mid game, that's pretty important. However, if you're playing this in the right deck, you're probably playing this in a discard deck. If you're playing this in a discard deck, you probably don't need to worry about it because you've got other ways to make your opponent's hand go to 0 on your attack step, or at least 1 on your attack step, so they can't negate Hamlin's attack. Hamlin Step, however, is a spell that allows you to find Hamlin and also negate its downside, right? It costs 1 enter, that being a blue. You get to draw 2 cards and put up to 1 Hamlin Trickster from your hand into the field. Then target Hamlin Trickster on your field gains. The Signy's attack cannot be negated until end of turn. So it basically just turns off that thing. I guess the opponent could theoretically, based on the way that it works, discard 2 cards, but it still wouldn't get negated. You can also have a life burst here, which is you may discard a card. If you do, put target upped Signy on the opponent's field on the bottom of its owner's deck. I actually like that life burst, not a ton, because it's a card disadvantage and it has the word upped, but I actually think it's pretty okay, and it's fine if you're trying to figure out ways to slot in some more life bursts into your deck if you're running a Hamlin Master Trickster. But I actually think that as discard decks get better, and there will be more abilities to discard, just basically ensuring your opponent has no card in hand, Hamlin Step is less necessary. So realistically, I think the best way to use this package is probably a two Hamlin Steps, 4 Hamlin Master Tricksters. That's where I put it at. Some decks, again, I think if you're finding your opponents are ending their turn with no cards in hand, basically, or at the start of your attack step, there's no cards in hand, probably don't need the Hamlin Step at all. Moving right along, let's go into Machina Guardian Dragon. You're going to see a lot of people shorthand this as MGD, as that's what it is in the Japanese. It's got a main phase and attack phase timing. It allows you to perform the following action: put a card from your enter zone into the trash, or discard a card. If you do that a total number of 3 times, target Elrig on your opponent's field. Whenever the target Elrigs on your opponent's field attacks this turn, negate that attack. Okay, so let's dive into why this is a great card. It also has the ability to just draw a card at the very least, but you probably never use this to just draw a card. It's also, its piece cost is 0, so that's also one of the reasons why it's good at the first end. The second end is that you are able to have a very wide distance of cost, right? It either costs 3 enter, or it costs 3 cards, or it costs 2 cards and 1 enter, or it costs 1 enter and 2 cards, whatever variation that you decide to do. And then you basically just turn off an Elrig attack for the entirety of the turn. While that doesn't seem super powerful, in retrospect, you're looking at it and being like, well, isn't getting a guard better because I can just play the guard and then I'm only discarding 1 card instead of, potentially 3? The answer is this can be free, right? It could cost the cards in your hand and be free. So you're never blown out with this card in your Elrig deck. The other thing is that it can negate attacks, which means that, for example, if the opponent has a way to up their Elrig and attack a second time or a third time, right? Tama being one that's going to be coming in the future that does that. Nova being another one that has a lot of Signies that allow it to do that. Or if it gains Double Crush, if it's using, for example, Glory Grow, or if it's Endless Punchline, you can negate all of it. Or if it's just Lions once a game in general, which you can negate all the damage, regardless of how many times they can up the Elrig due to you negating the damage. This is an incredible, Elrig piece to do this. Now, where I see this is any decks that want to stop bleed or want to change combat math just enough to get to a turn 5 would be running this type of card. I think it's great. I think you should consider it in your Elrig deck for sure. It kind of competes a little bit with Xenocluster, but not always, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So, in your flex spots of your Elrig deck, you might consider running this. The next one is Yuki, Blessed General. This is a level 1 common white Signy. It has 3,000 power. It's got a very simple effect, which is during your opponent's turn, as long as the center Elrig is white, this gets 5,000 power, so it turns into an 8,000 power. This is high unvanishable by level 1s. It is also an awesome defender. It's actually, it's not a great attacker, because it's only during your opponent's turn. But this is an incredible defender. One of the reasons why you played Typo in the Nova deck was because it was just a very good defender on your opponent's turn, but it had the downside of having a life burst, and the deck was already really tight for how many life bursts it wanted. This frees that up. So this is just an upgrade right away to your Elrig deck, or your main deck for your Nova decks. But you'll also see that many white-based aggro decks are either going to do one of two things. They're going to either say, I have all of my removal in the Elrig deck, and I use my main deck as defense, right? So just board positioning, to make it hard for the opponent to hit me, and I can win in a race. Or they do things like they're just trying to find out ways to draw more cards and beat out like the combo or the control decks. This being said is just is one of those, right? It's one of those defensive white Signy, but you'll probably want to use this in mid-range decks, control decks, or even some aggro decks if you're just talking about jockeying for board position. Actually, I think it's one of the best jockeying for board position cards that you could be running right now. And speaking of jockeying for board position kind of cards, we have the Love Dobby. Yeah, it's the first time I've seen it in English. Love Dobby Code Maze. This has an incredible card. I can barely believe this is a common. It is 8,000 power, level 2, but it gets plus 2,000 power for each white Elrig you have on the field. Meaning if you have a full set of white Elrigs on the field, this card is 14,000 power. That's ridiculous for a level 2. It's just so much stats. And then it also has an incredible life burst, which is if you have 2 or more white Elrigs on your field. I don't know why you'd be running this in any deck that doesn't have at least 2 white Elrigs on your field. You can return target Signy with power 10,000 or less from your opponent's field to their owner's hand. So I said I like the free stuff, but 8,000 is not quite hitting it. 10,000 hits pretty much everything that you're trying to hit with a life burst. So this card has got an incredible life burst. It's great in aggressive decks. It's actually great in mid-range and control decks as well. It's an all-arounder staple for those types of deck. Any deck that wants to be mono white will be wanting to run this card, and it's actually a reason to run mono white in my opinion. At least 2, and you could feel fine throwing it up like a black Elrig or something with this, and feel fine knowing that this is still a level 2 12,000, which is really the standard that you're trying to hit with your level 2 if you're trying to jockey for board position for white Signies. And the reason why aggro decks like it is that life burst is incredible, plus it ends up just being hard for your opponent to deal with, plus a 14k can pretty much kill anything. The reason why mid-range decks and combo deck or control decks like it is because it enter deprives with its life burst while also being just an incredibly difficult wall to deal with, so it's sticky. Those are the reasons why most people will be playing this type of card. Going right along from mono white, let's talk about mono red cards, I guess. Diabride Engagement Crystal is going to be a very, very good card to use. It's a level 3 with a power 12,000. It's got a life burst of choose 1 vanish target up to Signy on your opponent's field or draw a card. The abilities are very strong. You've got the once a turn ability of whenever a red Signy on your opponent's field becomes the target of an opponent's ability or effect, the opponent chooses a card from their enter zone and puts it in the trash. It also has an enter effect, which is discard a card, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add a card from among that to your hand, and the rest into your trash. So the cool thing is that this card kind of does a lot of what red decks want as utilities, and it does it all very well, and it has a life burst at level 3. Red decks struggle a little bit with having life bursts at their level 3, so they often put it in their level 1s, but again, you want most of them to be in your level 3s if possible. So this kind of covers all of the red deck's bases in one card for things that they're looking for utility-wise. Often, red decks are looking to do enter burn the opponent. They're often looking for ways to filter out their cards, try to find either their lane openers or their guards to go into their defense for, and they're looking for a life burst in level 3. This does all of those things. It's actually deceptively strong. Yeah, the one enter burst might not make or break things, but it makes combat math for the 3-stop Elrigs, Madoka Clap, and Line Disrespect harder to deal with. The other thing that it does is it discards a card and lets you look at the top two. That's pretty good dig, right? You often are in this situation with red decks where you don't want to discard 3 cards with Devil Stinger. Um, so it kind of gets around that. It's a little less powerful than Devil Stinger, but it is marginal, and with all the other things that it offers, it ends up being pretty good regardless. And the fact that the cards that you looked for go to your trash is actually pretty cool too, because it lets you set up stuff with black. Um, in Wixoss that you might not otherwise be able to do. So I like this card quite a bit. I think if you're running a mono red deck, this is probably a 4 of in your decks for a while. You might trim it down to a 3 of or a 2 of in future sets, but right now it's definitely a 4 of. We've got CZ Natural Element. This has an atomic subtype, but I actually don't see it being played in very many atomic decks. But I do see it being played in just sort of like mid-range or tempo blue decks in general. It has a very good ability. It's a level 1, 2000 power. Its auto abilities, whenever the Signy attacks, your opponent draws a card and discards a card at random. It's got an enter effect that you very rarely use, which is that you can enter it, pay blue. If you've got a ZR, Natural Element Queen on your field, target Signy on your opponent's field gets negative 4000 power till end of turn. 4000's enough to kill, realistically, level 1 3000s, or you can use it in combination with your ZR to kill off things that are bigger, right? 12,000, because 8,000 plus 4,000 is 12,000. But again, you very rarely use it. Sometimes it plays in the same decks that the ZR deck does as well, so that ends up being just a bonus. But the fact that you can attack and make your opponent draw a card and discard a card at random turns on a lot of blue-based effects. Plus, it can also just screw opponents' hands, which is really what you're looking for in a tempo thing. You're just trying to hinder them. So it ends up being a pretty good card. Again, I don't value this super highly, but I think it's probably an okay card to fill out your tempo or your mid-range based blue-based decks. We're going to a set of cards I actually value quite highly for the dumbest reason in the world. These cards are all very, very, very good. I'm also noticing they all like to have their arms pointed to the left side of a card. So that's something they all have in common. But they also all are the hybrid enter multicoloreds, right? So these are level 1 5000s, which is a very good baseline stat power for level 1s. And they have the ability to be paid out for as any color you need. 2 of them have pretty relevant Signy types, which is Atom and Angel. These things make it easier for you to run decks that are tribal based. You're going to see a lot of CE Natural Element in these atomic decks in the future. In fact, there's going to be a green-blue one in the future as well that pushes atomics into green, surprisingly, which is cool. So that just goes to show you the power of these level 1s. Not to mention, when you're looking at level 1s, that's the place you are looking for utility. And you're also looking for, you have the most bandwidth for your level 1s, right? Because you're running 16 to 18 level 1s, so you have the most slots available for them. And you're also looking to save your life bursts for level 2s and level 3s. So it ends up just being like that these are very relevant because of that. What's more relevant as well is the fact that you can now run up to 8 of these double colors if you need to, right? Some decks really appreciate that. For example, the Madoka decks will really appreciate running the ability to run 6 blue-white cards that they can dig up with MC Line Dig, as well as they have a little bit of greedy costs in terms of they want a lot of blue and they want a lot of white. So this just allows for flexibility on that end. White, blue, black ends up being in the same boat where they sometimes need a multitude of cards, and that can fit it, but having the angel typing is pretty relevant. And then, of course, the atomic Signy is just going to be fantastic moving forward. Moving right along, we've gotten to our Nabino. This is the first time I'm seeing this one in English, by the way. So excuse me when I struggle with some of the names. Nabino, Tessuna Crimson General. This is a level 2 with 5,000 power. It has a very good auto ability in red, which is that at the beginning of your attack phase, if there are 3 or more different red Signy on your field, and there are 2 or more cards in your opponent's enter, the opponent has to choose a card from their enter and put it into the trash. So this ends up being a really good mono red enter burn type of thing. Most decks will want to run this probably as a 2 of, because they're running Kintokis and other enter burns, but it just allows you a lot of enter burn over a course of a game. And I like it. The only issue is that you need to have different Signy on the field, not just that they all need to be mono red, so it's not quite as easy to activate as Hera. But in the end of the day, if you're being like, all right, play one of these, play a Hera, and play, I don't know, a Lancelot, a Kintoki, like, you've got setups where this works really fine and dandy. So I like this card a lot. I think you'll be seeing it as in the future of red decks, just as a very good mono red card in the future. I put Musica Vogue 3 on here. Now, you're going to notice that I didn't put any of the other L-rigs, because none of them really stand out to me as being particularly strong, and out of all of them, Musica stands out to be the most particularly strong. Again, either paired with the Sangha that enter charges 3 and costs 2 and opens up a lane, or the X Step Out, which is what I prefer to use it with. I think this gives a much more hyper-aggressive aggro deck that you can see the deck tech for on the channel if you want to check out more details for, that is pretty unusual. And I also think that it's one of those cards that may get better in the future depending on what they print, right? Like, all you need is another assist L-rig that's got main phase timing and costs like 1 or something like that, and has an incredible ability for you to be like, all right, we're starting to lean towards this card being a little bit more broken. Being able to double play that card could really make the difference. Right now, X Step Out is quite strong on its own. Let's talk about Caesar Wicked General. This is a level 2 black card with 5,000 power. Its enter ability is you can pay black if you do, and you have 7 or more cards in your trash. This Signy gains constant as long as the Signy in front of this Signy is got power 5,000 or less. This Signy gains Assassin. How many times can you say Signy in one go? I don't know. Guess 4, right? That's the amount in here. Anyways, easy access to late game Assassin for the opponent, especially against aggro decks. And there's going to be more than enough 5,000s running around, just between the sheer amount of Lancelots, Heras, other Caesars, the various things that you're going to be seeing that are power 5,000 or less. So I think this is a pretty strong card, and one that also Black Phosphorus, PA, Natural Element in the Atomic deck. Yeah, there's going to be a ton of 5,000s running around. The only issue is you need to have 7 or more cards in your trash, which you really don't have, generally speaking, till turn 2, or till turn 3. You might have on turn 2, depending on your deck composition. That's the only thing that makes it a hair lower. If it was 5 or more cards in your trash, this card would be awesome. This would be like comparable to probably Hera at least. But as such, you're probably going to want to lean in your aggro more towards Hera and Lancelot, and then have this as a 1 of or 2 of in your deck to pick up with your Deus ability if you want to snipe something. I put these all in one sitting here. This is our reasons as to why, aside from also the multicolored, why Atomic is now about to become a strong force in the meta. Not only do you have PA, which is basically removes a Signy 8,000 or less. You have BP at level 2, which removes a Signy at 10,000 or less. You have to pay an Atomic Signy from your enter zone and also discard Atomic Signy, but you're also playing blue, so that's really not that big of a deal. You'll draw cards. And you can give a Signy negative 10,000 power, which is so strong on the level 2 slot. But then we also have the natural sort of pairing between H2 and H2O, which is quite strong on its own. H2 is a level 3. Whenever this Signy is risen on top of your opponent, discards a card at random. And then it has the enter ability, pay blue, and you can draw a card. So this is just glue, because what you're really trying to do is put an Ana Mirage or a H2O Natural Element Queen on top of it. The H2O Natural Element Queen is a 13 powered Signy, so it's very powerful. You have to rise it on top of an Atom Signy. It has a constant, when it's your opponent's turn, if this Signy has one or more cards underneath it and would leave the field due to one of your opponent's effects, that's pretty much everything minus the negative effects. Instead, you can put all cards under this Signy into the owner's trash, and it just stays into the field, right? It's also auto abilities. Whenever this attacks, you can draw a card or make your opponent discard a card at random. Both these effects are very strong, as we've seen with Bruno. It's also got a very good life burst, which is draw 2 cards, put up to 1 atomic Signy from your hand into the field. So that's going to lane clutter very easily, and it also enables the lane clutter in the atomic deck very easily, because you're drawing those 2 cards, but you probably already have an Atom Signy in your hand. But you also could do things like put BP or PA out, and then close out a third lane by not only lane cluttering, but killing the thing that's in the other lane. So it ends up being a very, very, very good life burst for this type of deck, very consistent. You will see a lot of Atomic Signy in the future. Moving out of the Atomic Signy, we've got Manomin, the Azure Evil. It's a level 1, 3000 power Signy. It just has it's a demon for what it's worth, and that might matter a little bit. It's a very simple ability, which is at the beginning of your attack phase, you may discard a card. If you do, the opponent discards a card. Getting the ability to, it's Blue's version of Enter Burn. Making the opponent discard cards is always very good. Plus, this allows you to discard a card too, which is relevant to some of Blue's effects, like Squid, Glow Squid, Firefly Squid. So this is a very strong card, but unassuming. You're probably going to use this to fill out your deck. You're never really going to want this as a 4 of, except for the most really discard-heavy decks, which will exist. But you'll want to make sure that you pair it with ways to draw cards as well, so that way you aren't just killing yourself just to kill your opponent a little bit. We have 2 more cards to go over. The last one is Little John. I felt bad that I have not said a green card this entire set review and been like, ooh, this is a good card. I genuinely think Little John is a good card. The issue is I still don't think there's a critical mass of green good cards that this card suddenly makes green super viable. I don't think we're going to see that till set 6, with a specific L rig that allows you to prevent damage. But I actually like this card. Everyone knows that I like, at least if you've been a long-time listener, that I've been a pretty big fan of Robin Hood Jade General Queen. And this modifies your Robin Hood to be much better. You have to remember that, generally speaking, and I'm summing this up, right? So excuse my lack of technical speak here. What Robin Hood does is it allows you to flip over 2 of your Signy at the beginning of your attack phase, and then attack, board wipe your opponent's for 2 enter and get 1 damage in, right? It's Robin Hood's niche is that it can get 1 damage in every game that it's out. The thing with Robin Hood is it can't get more than 1 damage because you have to flip over your 2 Signies. This modifies it, right? There's a lot of text here, but to just sum it down so you understand what it is, it's a level 1 3000 power that basically modifies the text on your Robin Hood that says instead you can flip those Signies when Robin Hood attacks, which will then still allow Robin Hood to board wipe the opponents, but it does mean that if there's another card on the opponent's field that is like a lane open, you can attack with the open laned Signy and then attack with your Robin Hood and flip your 2 Signy over and then board wipe the opponent for the 2 enter. So it modifies Robin Hood in a good way that allows you to get multiple hits if that's something that you were looking to do. The other thing is that as long as there's a Robin Hood on your field, this gets plus 5000 power, so it turns into 8000 power. Again, the only thing they need to do is get rid of Robin Hood for that to not be super great anymore, so I don't love cards that are dependent on other card Signies on your field. But I like that this modifies Robin Hood to be more powerful. Robin Hood's on my short list of most powerful green cards, but there's not a ton of powerful green cards. Last one is going to be Yuki Yuki Pawn and Yuki Yuki Pai Hayarara. Help me with the pronunciation in the comments down below, please, guys. I think this is actually an interesting assist Elrig line. You're going to need to pair this with a 3-stop Elrig, either Madoka Clap or the what is it called? The MC Line Disrespect. There we go. You're gonna need to pair it with one of these because neither one of these are attack phase timing. So you're leaving yourself open to just dying if you don't pair something heavily defensive with this. But if you're in the market for drawing cards and also shoring up your board position, this is the only assist Elrig that really hits that niche, and that niche is needed a little bit in Wixoss, depending on if you are more of defensive mid-range deck or if you are a control deck. This might be something you're interested in. The abilities are level 1 Yuki Yuki. Level 1 is main phase grow, cost 0. Enter, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 2 cards without guard from among them, put in your hand, and put the rest, aka one of them, on the bottom of your deck. This allows you to get the best 2 cards out of your top 3, no matter what they are, except for guards. It does not have to be a Signy. It just needs to be something that's not a guard, which is very good, I think. I think it's an incredible card. Anything that's the baseline of draw 2 is always really good, so anything that is better than that is very good. And then following it up with the other version, it's level 2. Its grow cost is 0, it's got main phase timing. You look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 2 Signy from among them, add them to your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. The other enter ability is until the end of your next enter phase, increase your center Elrig's limit by 2. So more or less, if you've grown this, right, you're going to have a, let's say it's a level 2, right? Your grown is going to now be able to do level 2, level 2, level 2 on the battlefield. But more importantly, for your level 3s, it means that you can put down a level 3, level 3, level 3 until end of turn. I don't know if they're ever going to increase sort of like the limit cap, like if this will matter if we ever have a level 4 center Elrig, but if it does, it also kind of future-proofs and becomes even better then. But the fact right now that you can do a level 3, level 3, level 3, which means that you can potentially put down a crazy combo like Exia, Hanj, Exia, and you're just spouting a field of 15 Ks that are that also then close down lanes. I mean, you can go as crazy as putting Exia on your field if you want. But this is just one of those reasons that like it makes pretty crazy things that you can do. I mean, you can put down Kentoki with that type of effect. Or you can put down Nobunaga Kentoki, Nobunaga Anna Mirage something else, you know, like Kentoki. It allows for a wacky board positioning, offensively and defensively, that you aren't going to quite normally get. Plus, it allows you to really put strong power out there that you wouldn't normally be able to get. So it has a niche there, but I think you do need to keep in mind that you are giving up some defensive power in order to put up some better positioning, which in Wixoss is probably fine. But it has a very relevant niche. I don't think there's going to be any other Elrigs that do this type of effect in the future. So it's definitely something to keep in the back of mind. It also gives you access to white, which sometimes blue-black decks specifically want access to white so they can run Nexia in their deck. And I think it's very strong in that respect. And these are the best cards that you could be playing out of Curiosity Diva. Again, there's more cards in Curiosity Diva than what's covered here, but I don't think they're very relevant as of yet. And like with the Atomic Signy, I didn't go over PA. I didn't think PA was all that strong of a card, but now that we have good Atomic synergies, I'm bringing it back up. So if there's any cards that I missed, like Cosmos stuff here, that you think could be good in the future, they probably can be, but I'll talk about them when we get to them being good in the meta suddenly. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you want more deck techs and other cool videos done by the LifeBurst Podcast.